In this series of conversations, we meet Liv Larson, mediator, author, and longtime teacher of nonviolent communication. For over 2 decades, Liv has worked at the intersection of conflict, empathy, and transformation, helping people navigate some of life's most difficult conversations. But this is not just about technique. It's about what happens inside us when we choose to stay present. When we meet resistance with curiosity or anger with listening, together we explore how conflict can become a space for growth rather than avoidance, and what it really means to hold space for others without losing touch with ourselves. Liv shares stories from the field, reflections on power, and the inner practices that help her return to empathy, even when it's hard. Whether you're familiar with nonviolent communication or simply wondering how to engage more honestly and bravely in moments of tension, this series of episodes offers thoughtful and grounded invitations into a deeper kind of being. Let's begin.
Hi again, Liv.
Hi, Kai.
I've been thinking quite a lot since our last conversations. You mentioned quite a lot of times, like constructed view of emotions. You use that term, and that led me to think about that depending on how we see emotions, that we kind of influence our experience. And it also reminds me of one, I don't know what to call it, but like 30 years ago, I was on some kind of personal development training. And I don't know if they taught this, but this is what I believed, that if you were angry, you just had to kind of live it out, and then you would get rid of this anger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember us being in the room screaming and being angry, or trying to stimulate that anger, and later learning and teaching nonviolent communication, this idea that we feel something because we need something. That was totally, so then I didn't want to get rid of the feeling, but now I used it as kind of a window to know more about my needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought if we could talk about our view on emotions and how that affects our experience of life and conflicts and so forth. And I'm curious to hear how you have kind of your learning about this topic over the years. If you could kind of summarize, so to get some kind of, I don't know, Liv's historical travels in the field of emotions.
Well, one thing I do remember is that I remember the first time I heard the concept that human beings all over the world has a set of 9 emotions that we all share. And I remember feeling like, wow, like a relief, like a sense of connection to people, like a sense of, wow, we are the same, no matter what culture, no matter what skin color, no matter what gender, and so on. So that's the first thing I felt like, oh, people are not so difficult after all. Because until then I thought, well, people are so different. Everyone is different from the other. And I found that very comforting to hear that first idea around emotions.
But it sounds like it's not as comforting now as it was then. Do I read between the lines correctly?
Yes, because after having kind of used that, taught that, lived that, I realized I started kind of getting lazy at, well, I know you have the same emotions as me, so what's the fuss? Like, it's just emotions, and you have the same and I have the same. So what? I'm exaggerating a bit, but it was like I wasn't interested in emotions at all. I was interested in needs, like drives, what was
Like motivations?
motivating. Yes. But I started losing it was like, well, emotions doesn't really matter much. Um, and I think it had to do with that quite mechanical view of emotion. And then I remember watching,
Wait, what do you mean mechanical? Can you say more about that? What do you mean?
well, machine-like description. Human beings are like this, and they have those emotions, and they have like those needs, and this is how we work, and period. Like
Ah,
as there's no
so
variations.
yeah, there's no variations, but there's no awe and wonder, kind of. There's no mystery of life. It's
Mm.
just like a list of feelings,
Yeah.
9, 7, like that.
Yes, and what used to be for me an awe about, well, they are natural. They are like from us. They are they are original, kind of originally felt emotions. Uh, from having that first thing like 30 years ago, uh, it started not having that effect at all.
Mhm. So where are you now in relationship to feelings?
I think it started with me stumbling upon a TED talk by Lisa Feldman Barrett, where she talks about how emotions are made, and it's the same. She's written a book with the same title. She's a researcher on emotions mainly. And first time I watched it, and she claimed that emotions are much more flowing, constructed, much more personal, much more made up in the moment to support us. I heard that and I thought, no, she's totally wrong. I remember even being irritated and turned off by the idea. But I'm always suspicious when I get kind of like when I don't like something. I mean, people are free to think whatever they want, but when I get irritated by it, usually there is some gift for me there that I can, there is something I'm pushing off.
So
So I
how many
listen.
so how many times have you seen that TED talk then?
Well, I've listened to that or seen that TED talk many times, and I've also listened to a lot of other podcasts with Lisa Feldman Barrett and read her books, and she has a very compelling case, I'd say.
Mhm. So what's her case then?
Well, she claims that emotions are constructed. She claims they are more of predictions than reactions, which for me was like, what? Don't they come as a reaction afterwards, after I've seen something and then I react? No, she claims they are predictions.
But
They,
like we learn and maybe also teach nonviolent communication. It's like there's an observation, and sometimes that's called a stimulus that stimulates our emotions, and then we feel something. We don't judge because we try to take responsibility. So I feel something, and then because I need something, and then I want something. That's kind of the linear, the steps.
yeah.
So would this kind of change how you see the steps, or would you kind of have other steps, or
Mhm.
where are you going with this?
Well, first of all, I love those four components of NVC because they're making communication uh, so simple. It's something we can all practice and do and so on. And that for me has become very different from what is actually happening in our brains or what is happening in our nervous system. So I don't want to claim that this is how the order how it happens, but I still wouldn't change that. But there's one thing in your question, and that is when you say we see something, there's an observation, we hear something, and then it is stimulating our emotions. That formulation of it makes it sound like we have emotions already in our brains, and they're like from a little machine that goes boop. Now there's, I see this, I get scared. So it's like uh, they are stimulated rather than constructed in order to save, to make us safe.
Ah. So again, back to my initial question, it's about how we see things that influence our experience. So if we believe that we are stimulated, our experience would be different than if we think, well, in some way, consciously or not, I'm constructing this experience with the purpose of taking care of myself, like preparing for life.
Yes and no. I mean, it why we have lived with the idea for so long, for like hundreds of years, that there are emotions that get stimulated is because that's how we experience it. Because this is a process that is so fast that most of us will not ever be kind of aware in the moment how we're constructing an emotion. When we look back at it, we can be aware of it. Uh, when we look back at a situation, I can realize, well, yes, I was thinking this, I was comparing this to this other situation, and this happened, and of course I had that emotion. But in the moment, it would be very time or energy consuming to be aware of it in the moment, to try to be aware of it. When we are aware of it, it's a beautiful thing. But it for most of us, that's not what we're striving for. If it happens, it happens.
So you're
But
saying like if I if I had a if I'm afraid of black dogs,
hmm
so when I see a black dog, I get afraid.
hmm
And then you ask some questions. Maybe you ask, so what's your experience of black dogs? And then I might remember a moment when I was a kid, and there was this neighbor who had a black dog who actually bit me. And you're saying that now I'm afraid of I'm kind of mixing that memory with this moment just to make sure I'm safe, even though so I'd rather be afraid of a black dog than checking, is this a nice black dog? Something like that.
yes, and you might not even remember something from your childhood, but it still had an imprint in your in your memory bank of a black dog. So it will affect you to be prepared to run, because black dogs can be dangerous, and emotions have. I've become really. I've fallen in love with emotions again, because the emotion of fear can then motivate you to run, to take care of yourself, to kind of stay alert to this black dog coming towards you. And of course, it can also help you realize that you have a reaction that might not be supportive, because
Yeah,
this
if I
black dog is
if I
beautiful.
have yeah, if you know this black dog and say, hey Kai, this is not a dangerous dog, and then you help me kind of get to
Yeah.
know this dog. And that
Yeah.
actually happened quite a many times with our dog who is not
hmm
with us anymore. People who were afraid of dogs, and they get to meet this, and they were transformed.
hmm
uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's a really good example, actually, how new experiences, putting ourselves in new situation, stretching when life is a bit dangerous, and staying aware to those new situation, then emotions will be reformulated. They will be reconstructed, because now I know I don't need to run at first sight of a black dog, but I can actually wait a bit and ask if this dog is safe for me to be around, and so on.
So it's like before I could have like a static view, like I'm afraid of dogs, especially black dogs. But with this kind of view, it could help me to kind of heal from a bad experience and kind of befriend dogs, or and then we could exchange dogs for other humans or situations or
Mm-hmm.
challenges in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
But
mean, I really believe that having new experiences, daring to have new experiences, will rearrange how we construct emotions.
so it sounds liberating, kind of. So why
Mm.
don't we everyone adapt to this, or how do you see
You
it?
mean to this view?
Yeah.
Well, just like I said before, for me, the view of the classical view, as Lisa Feldman Barrett calls it, but like the view of emotions as a set of set uh, brain states is kind of comforting. It's kind of easy. So, for example, teaching nonviolent communication to others, it's like an easy thing to say. Well, we have those emotions, we have those universal needs, and we can start working from there. If I'm also trying to describe that emotions are constructed, it's like it's a much more complicated
The
way of
workshop
explaining
will
it.
become much longer, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
One day introduction will turn into a week-long introduction.
Yeah, that's the risk. So, but simplified ideas can sometimes be great and sometimes be quite limiting.
But like you said, you were helped by that idea initially, and then later on, it was kind of not juicy enough. So that's why you're enjoying this constructed view much more at this moment. Is that?
Yeah, as NVC has so much to do with empathy and empathic listening. For me, that when I heard that idea first, it helped me with compassion for others. It helped me with that kind of curiosity. Okay, what are your emotions at this moment? What are your needs in this moment? It kind of helped me believing that there is something that I can concretely catch that you're going through. It felt like safe enough for me to just dive into what you were going through. Uh, but then, as I said, later on, it became kind of dull.
Hmm.
And now it's much more interesting to, instead of even imagining any emotions, just trying to stay with you in the moment and try to experience what you experience.
But isn't there a risk, like if you listen to someone and you believe that, well, emotions are constructed. So if you're kind of frustrated or sad or irritated or angry, I can just tell you, well, it's just your construction. So construct something better or something that you like. Don't be a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
that the risk?
For sure, it's a risk that we are kind of uh, well, using it as a weapon rather than as something we connect with. And to ourselves too. We can start self-blaming, like, I shouldn't be so afraid of this. I should make this phone call. I should not be so angry at my son. Or, I can start using that, knowing that emotions are constructed. And then that idea has become simplified because it makes it sound, because they're constructed, it sounds like, one, that they are not as important, and two, that they will be easier to change. So it's like the whole set of ideas gets gets kind of uh, meshed up in a more complicated thing than it actually is.
But it sounds like we're back to the curiosity again. That if we're having a curious approach, it influences quite a lot, rather than if we have an idea and we just think it's true without,
Yeah.
willing to see maybe it's not. Maybe the Earth is not going around the sun. Maybe the Earth is flat. We all know that's wrong, but what if? Because it
Mhm.
looks like that some days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that then we are into, so what is actually helpful in the ways we see things? In what way does science help us? And does science sometimes not help us in when it comes to human connection? And that I love that question as well, to kind of think about what views do we have that help us, and what gets in the way.
Yeah, but you said before that, well, we can reflect on our experience afterwards, and then we can kind of see that we actually construct our experience. But can't we experience it in the in the moment? Do you have an experience or something to say about that? Because I would believe it much more if I could kind of, it's not just because I can reflect on it. I would want to experience it in the moment.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I do have personal experiences it where it made where I became aware of it, where it changed a lot for me.
uh-huh.
Uh, and
That's kind of fitting because we got some email from some listener and they wanted to hear stories. So now I have to ask, are you willing to share that that experience?
yeah, the strongest one, strongest when it comes to actually dangerous, was a moment when there was a fire in our close to our house in a storage room where we have our some storage space, and there was a fire in there, and I ran there to check out what was happening, and I opened the door, and I got like burning rubber coming towards my face. And the fire inside of the door made me go like panic. And the first thought that went through my head was like, I'm just gonna close this door and pretend it I didn't see it. So that would have been a very bad choice. But because I had just been studying emotions and the idea of constructed emotions, there was a little thought in my head too that went like, I'm panicking and I am constructing that out of some reason. And when I realized I had constructed that panic, to be safe, to run, to not get into this fire, instead I noticed my thoughts calmed down, my emotions calmed down. I was still like on my toes, but I realized if I can get into step on this fire, put something on it, step on it, and I can and do a few things to get the fire out. Uh, it's a much better choice because we live out in the forest, so it's not like there's no time to call for a fire brigade. The whole house would have burned down. So for me, going from that pure panic that I saw was coming up to a totally different mindset and emotion. It was super exciting. It was like I forgot all about the fire afterwards because I realized I had constructed the emotion in the moment and in a better service of me.
But are you saying, just to kind of pick on your wordings, you were you were aware that you were constructing, so
Yeah.
and that kind of was an aha moment or something.
I was aware that I was seeing this space of fire and that I translated that into a too dangerous situation. I better run or pretend it doesn't happen. I that was the part of the construction that I realized that's not a good way to construct how I feel in the moment because that will make me apathetic
And homeless.
and homeless and dangerous, create a dangerous situation. And all my books would have burned. So that would have been, and
Yeah,
all
it's
our skis, like, that would have been even more terrifying.
yeah, yeah. People who listen to this who haven't met us in real life should know that we love cross country skiing, and we have skis for a whole football team in our storage.
Yeah.
Anyways, uh,
Yeah.
cool. But all right, so that you had that experience, and what did that experience do to you? Like, did it change you in some way, and in what way, if it did?
I would say that I have more and more moments where I have strong emotions that I believe is because of something that happened on the outside, or something I heard, or something I saw, that I have started questioning or being more aware of. And not in all moments for sure. But it also had made me more kind of relaxed around being a mediator, and someone has an emotion, like a strong emotion, where I could either be scared of it, where it would go, or I can stay present with that person, knowing that my presence, my empathy can sometimes help a person construct the emotion differently. And I think that's one of the impacts that empathic listening can have, is that the person that usually have felt super lonely, maybe thought of abandonment and so on, actually now when there's someone staying present with them, that whole setting is reconstructing in emotions.
Mhm. Interesting.
Mm.
So, but if people who listen to this, and maybe they, they have learned that this old or um, universal idea of emotions, that they are all the same, and they are not so many, but they are and they are stimulated. Um, and if they get curious about this new or this other view, do you have any advice or anything for them, how to explore? Because if people are not curious, it doesn't matter. But if they are curious, do you have some kind of try this? That would be a cool experience, or uh,
I mean, one simple thing that I think also Marshall Rosenberg, the guy behind nonviolent communication, also talked about. He said that, well, imagine someone is knocking on your door late in the evening. Uh, what is your reaction? Well, that all depends. If I feel lonely, uh, I have been wanting to talk to someone, I might feel really, really happy because I have a need for connection and to talk and to be heard and to exchange with someone. I want company. And if the same situation, someone knocks at your door, and last time someone knocked on the door, it was a very unpleasant situation. So you might feel fear. You might be scared because you have a need for safety. So that whole thing with connecting needs to emotions is actually part of constructing them, to reconstruct them. So for me, when I think about a situation, I can ask myself, can I see the situation out of some other angle? And what does it do to me if I see it out of this angle? And does that open a third way or a fourth way for me to act on? So I don't think, well, this is always a fun thing or this is always a bad thing. That's like
so?
a simple everyday thing that we can do.
But with that, are you saying that NVC and this constructed view on emotions, they are actually a good marriage? Like they kind of fit because of like the same. I've heard that story you told about Marshall, but others as well, that depending on our needs, we will feel different. Like if I want to go to bed and someone knocks on the door, I might get, irritated because I fear now that some neighbor will want to have coffee and have a good talk, and I will miss my beauty sleep.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
And what
yeah.
were you wanted to ask? There was a question in there.
Yeah, if it's a good fit, like
Hmm.
if you see that this constructed view on emotions is a better fit on nonviolent communication than this uh, uh,
The classical way of
the,
seeing
the
it,
classical way of seeing that there are fixed and universal feelings that are
brain
emotions that are.
states or reactions or whatever you call them. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a beautiful fit because we claim many times in nonviolent communication that nonviolent communication is a process language. It's a language of describing a process of what's going on inside of me, what's going on inside of you, and that following life in that. So yes, I think it's a beautiful fit, and it might not be the best fit when we want to start teaching it, like a basic NVC introduction. That might not be what we want to bring up. Uh, but
Yeah,
at this,
because I remember when I started learning nonviolent communication like 30 years ago, my vocabulary or my awareness of my feelings was that I could feel good or bad. That was kind of the contrast I had. And then when I read Marshall's book, uh, that was a very broad generalization, good and bad. So it might have been too complicated, too complex for me at that time.
yeah.
Uh,
And on top of that, I mean, or the opposite of that is that research has shown that the more nuanced we can be with the language that describes emotions, the more granularity we have in describing our inner world, the better we can feel, the more we can find tools to navigate what we feel and do something about it. So I see a real risk in believing that there is only like seven or nine or whatever a number emotions, because the nuance in them in themselves, a language that describes it as closely as possible, is actually serving us. But of course, that is super difficult if we only have good and bad. I feel good or I feel bad. Um,
well, I would only feel good actually, and only with some really, really good friends I would dare to say I feel bad.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
had one emotion, but I'm also happy having a lot more words now, like you said, with the nuances that I can actually differentiate between when I'm irritated and when I'm mad,
mm,
because that is quite a big of difference.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
And with that, for me, the curiosity of emotional states is like, it's so much bigger because it's like, yeah, I'm irritated. And then sometimes I realize it's because my blood sugar is high. And sometimes it is because I haven't been heard. So the more nuanced I can be with actually how am I feeling irritation? Well, it's a mix of irritation and restlessness. Ah, restlessness. That's probably the blood sugar. And irritation, yeah, and there's also fear and loneliness and I need something like company maybe. So it can really be a support in navigating how I want to take care of myself and others with that.
kind of a deepening self empathy to connect more with myself with more precision.
Hmm.
And then it should also be the other way around, that empathizing with other people, I would be more precise if I can like sniff out the nuances.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm actually realizing some of the first times I started to question the link between emotions and needs was the claim as the assumption in nonviolent communication that there is a need behind everything someone says or every action, which is a beautiful assumption. It's like very helpful, but it's not. This for me is this huge difference between truth and assumption. But somewhere in there for me, it became the truth that it's always some needs there. And then I started realizing that I got irritated not because I had the need to be heard, for example. No, I got irritated because I had so much coffee that my whole body was itching. And of course we can say there's a need behind that, like of less coffee or of resting or of movement and so on. But there isn't that direct link that we sometimes claim if we're too unnuanced about it. When we think that emotions are biological responses, they're not as strongly linked to needs as when we see emotions arising in relationship to when our needs are met or unmet. That's a much more flowing idea, I'd say.
So emotions are not only psychology, like you can say, if you overdose coffee, that will affect your biology.
Yeah.
So we don't forget that our choices, good and bad, so to say, also influence our emotional states.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And also culture, like in some cultures, it's really not okay for a woman to be angry or loud. And then, of course, she might choose to show other emotions. And for in some cultures, it's not okay for men to be scared or sad or show that with crying and so on. And of course, they will try to change those emotions into something else uh, to actually to feel better, to fit in. So the culture does shape the emotions we have.
So, but it's it sounds like that is also like the construction, but the culture helps us construct the correct experience according to the culture and the norms.
Yeah.
And then if I travel to some other place, I might not know, I might not have that cultural training. So I might do things that people get confused about or that is not fitting, so to say.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that this view of the constructed view of emotions actually takes in consideration that we are biological creatures. We have a brain, we have a nervous system. We are cultural beings. We live in society. We are from moment one, from first second in our lives, we are shaped by the culture we are growing up in, and that is happening at the same time as we have a biology. And we also have the psychology of the thoughts we have around what we feel and how we feel around the
Our
thoughts we have.
interpretations. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
We are less simple but more beautiful, I'd say, with for in through my eyes with the constructed view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Who
And
wants
this
to be simple?
and this also connects to things like trauma or treatment or uh, different things that we base on those different kind of views.
Yeah.
So it affects a lot of different things.
Hmm. Cool. Sad to say, but we have a time that we need to keep, or I want to keep. So we need to
Yeah.
kind of round this conversation off. And I think this was kind of interesting. But before we do that, is there anything else you want to add to kind of close this loop?
Yeah, I just want to say to the listeners that in my book Unmasking Shame, I tried to compile this into something understandable. So there is a chapter on that, and I'm really proud of that chapter. I'm really happy that I could put it together in a way that I could. So if you have that book, please open chapter 2 and read it just after listening to this.
Yeah. So then I'll add that in the show notes. I'll also add the toolbox that we have created in kind of, and if you want to develop this more nuanced language and awareness of emotions.
Yeah.
yeah, so you can check it out in the show notes if you're interested.
Great idea.
All right, let's not
Let's go and feel
say
somewhere else.
yes, and let's not say goodbye, but see you next time. Yeah.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation with Liv Larson. If you want to learn more about Liv's work, upcoming trainings, or dive deeper into nonviolent communication, you'll find her at www.friaraliv.com. You'll find links to Liv's books mentioned in this episode in the show notes, along with more information about our international mediation program and the Reimagine Communication program, perfect if you're looking to deepen your practice in mediation and integrate nonviolent communication more fully into your life. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay connected,